When you picture a worker bee, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Probably this busy, hard-working little insect, right? Just buzzing around doing its job. For centuries, that's been the image. But we've also been making this one huge assumption about who these bees really are. But what if I told you that assumption was completely backward? The truth is honestly so much more incredible, and it's been hiding in plain sight for a very, very long time.
I mean, for most of history, we pretty much saw the beehive through our own human lens. Even a total genius like William Shakespeare pictured a male-dominated kingdom. In his play Henry V, he described this whole society of bee kings and magistrates and soldiers, all traditionally male roles. This idea, the male worker bee, that was just the accepted truth for hundreds of years.
And that question, right there, that's at the very heart of what we're talking about today. We're about to dive into a biological mystery that totally challenges centuries of what we thought we knew. It's a truth that completely flips our understanding of this tiny, complex world.
All right, so let's just leave the historical myths behind and jump straight into the scientific facts, because modern science has completely shattered our old understanding of how a beehive is structured. And the reality is, well, it's pretty extraordinary.
Here it is, the big reveal. Entomology, that's the scientific study of insects, has proven, without a shadow of a doubt, that every single bee you see out there building the hive, collecting nectar, making honey, every single one is female. The entire workforce is female. This chart really breaks it down perfectly. You've got the queen, she's female, and she lays all the eggs. Then you have the workers, also all female, who do literally everything else. They build, they forage, they make the honey, and the drones, well, they're the males, and their one and only job is to mate with a queen. That's it. So the entire operation is run by females.
Okay, so science cleared this all up for us, but that happened pretty recently in the grand scheme of things. Now, this is where the story takes a really fascinating turn. It looks like an ancient text might have known this exact biological fact over 1,400 years ago, and the clue was hidden right inside its grammar.
These verses come from the Quran, from a chapter that's actually named the bee. They describe God commanding a bee to do its work, to build a home, to eat from the flowers, and to follow the paths. Now, on the surface, it seems like a pretty straightforward, poetic description of a bee's life, right? But here's the thing. The English translation misses a critical, tiny detail that's buried in the original Arabic. The real meaning isn't just in the words themselves, but in the specific grammatical form that was used to speak to the bee. So let's put on our linguistic detective hats for a second and crack this ancient code. It all comes down to a really fundamental rule in the Arabic language. You see, unlike in English, verbs and commands in Arabic are gendered. You use one form of a word if you're talking to a male, and a different form if you're talking to a female. It's just a core part of how the language works. Now take a look at this. This is where it all clicks. For each of those commands, take, eat, and follow, there's a distinct form for masculine and a distinct form for feminine. And the Quran, when it's telling the bee to do these specific jobs, exclusively uses the feminine commands, ittaqihi, kuli, usluki. It is grammatically and very specifically addressing a female bee. So, wow, that's a pretty remarkable discovery. But how are we supposed to interpret it? Is it just a grammatical quirk, a coincidence, or is it something more profound? Let's actually look at the arguments on both sides. Okay, so a skeptic might say, well, the Arabic word for bee, nahl, can be treated as a feminine collective noun, so using feminine verbs would just be following the rules of grammar. That's fair. But the counter-argument points to the specific jobs being described. Building hives, foraging for nectar, those are things that only the female worker bees do. If the author believed the common idea that these were male soldiers, it would have made perfect sense to use the masculine form. So, where does all of this leave us? We've gone from an ancient myth to a modern scientific fact. And then we found a potential reflection of that fact in a 1,400-year-old text. Let's try to tie it all together.
It really just boils down to this, doesn't it? We've got two completely different descriptions of the worker bee. Shakespeare, writing a full 1,000 years after the Quran was revealed, was just reflecting the common but incorrect understanding of his day. It's an incredible contrast. The world's greatest playwright saw male soldiers running the hive, but the grammar hidden inside the Quran describes exactly what science would take another millennium to confirm, that the hive is powered by an incredible all-female workforce, a literal army of Amazons.
And that leaves us with one last thought to chew on. This whole story shows how a scientific fact, something totally unknown to humanity for centuries, was apparently encoded in an ancient text. And it just makes you wonder, what else is out there hidden in language, or in nature, or even in art, just waiting for us to finally find the right way to look at it?